The crisp air of February 1977 carried the quiet hum of everyday life in Colorado Springs, a stark contrast to the terror that was about to unfold. On the night of the 7th of February, at precisely 11:21 p.m., the Colorado Springs Police Department received a chilling call. A report of a suicide at an apartment in the 5400 block of North Nevada Avenue, but what officers discovered upon arrival was far more sinister. There, within the master bedroom of a Suncrest apartment, they found the lifeless body of Maria Lorraine Hansel. She was dressed in a blue jumpsuit, her young life extinguished by several brutal stab wounds to her chest and neck. Maria was tragically pronounced dead at the scene. Her death not a suicide, but a horrific homicide. Dwight Haar, one of the first detectives from the Colorado Springs Police Department to arrive that grim night, recounted his memories decades later. "I know the one thing that surprised us all is that she looked like she was probably in her mid-20s at that time," he recalled. "I was about 30, and we found out she was 14. We were just dumbfounded. Who would commit such a terrible crime against someone so young, and why?" These questions would haunt investigators and Maria's loved ones for nearly half a century. Maria Lorraine Hansel was born on the 23rd of March, 1962, in Tyler, Texas, to Glenn David Hansel, Sr. and Eva Marie Georges Hansel. Her childhood best friend, Kathy Mobberly Taylor, remembers Maria with profound affection. "She had such a good zest for life," Kathy recounted. "And yeah, so I loved her dearly. She was just a wonderful, wonderful friend and such a neat personality." Kathy fondly recalled Maria's playful spirit. "Maria skipped a lot, you know. She never really walked or ran. She skipped." Maria was the middle child among 7 siblings, and her young life had already seen its share of sorrow. In December of 1976, just months before her own death, her mother, Eva, passed away due to a heart condition. Eva's death left a significant void in Maria's life, a loss that impacted the entire family. She wanted kids. Lots of kids. So did I, Kathy recalled of their childhood dreams. Despite the tragic event, Maria, even at such a tender age, demonstrated remarkable maturity. She took on a maternal role, especially for her younger sister, Erica, who was just 6 years old. Even at such a young age, she had a maternal instinct about her that was ever present. A friend remembered. So many friends, people that were just drawn to her. Maria was a beacon of warmth and responsibility, a girl with a bright spirit despite the shadows that had touched her life. On the fateful evening of the 7th of February, 1977, Janie Clea, who resided in the Suncrest apartment complex near Maria's home at the northern edge of Colorado Springs on North Nevada Avenue, asked 14-year-old Maria if she could babysit her 2 sons, aged 8 and 6. Maria, known for her kind nature, readily agreed. She then called her best friend, Kathy, to invite her to join, but Kathy's mother refused as Kathy had to attend school the following day. This became the last phone call Kathy ever had with Maria. She said, "I love these kids who I'm babysitting." And then she said, "I better get going," Kathy tearfully recalled. She said, "I love you." And I said, "I love you too." Unbeknownst to Kathy, it would be the final time she would hear Maria's voice. Maria arrived at Janie's apartment to babysit her 2 children between 8:30 and 9 p.m. Later that evening, Janie called home and spoke with Maria, noticing nothing unusual in their conversation. Janie returned home at 11:15 p.m., finding nothing out of place, nothing missing. However, what awaited her in the master bedroom would haunt her forever. There, Janie found Maria's lifeless body. Shocked and horrified, she immediately called the police, who arrived within minutes. The El Paso County Coroner's Office conducted an autopsy, confirming that Maria had sustained multiple stab wounds to the chest and neck, injuries so severe that, as one report noted, they literally had to have a scarf around her neck. Her death was officially ruled a homicide. Neither of Janie's sons was harmed, and police found no signs of a forced entry or a break-in. This crucial detail led investigators to believe that Maria either knew her killer or was comfortable enough to let him into the apartment. While Maria's body showed no signs of sexual assault, police suspected the murder was sexually motivated due to the nature of the attack. They meticulously investigated Maria's friends and any possible boyfriends, but this line of inquiry did not yield an arrest. A critical piece of information came from Janie's sons. Her eldest son provided a vital clue, testifying that on the night of the murder, he had gotten out of bed and seen a young man in the apartment. The boy described the man as appearing slightly older than Maria, perhaps in his late teens, approximately 6 feet tall, white, with scruffy hair and acne. He wore a fluffy blue jacket, jeans, and black sneakers. Disturbingly, the boy witnessed the man putting his hand over Maria's mouth as she screamed, "Stop it!" several times. The man and Maria then went into the master bedroom, and the boy, a child himself, returned to bed, likely bewildered and frightened by what he had seen. As Detective Hauer reflected, it'd be pretty hard for young children to have to witness something like that, and that's just not right. The Colorado Springs Police Department did have one promising suspect, though he was never publicly identified at the time. He was arrested in Rhode Island shortly after Maria's murder for the murder of another girl. At the time of Maria's death, he had been living in Colorado Springs but left the city shortly afterward. However, there was never enough evidence to officially charge him with Maria's murder. Despite a thorough investigation, including numerous interviews, reports, and evidence collection, and aside from Janie's son's witness statement, no further leads materialized. The initial intense effort eventually waned, and the investigation went cold for decades. She was robbed. We were all robbed and left with a wound. Kathy Mobberly Taylor lamented, "The wound that is still incredibly wide open. There has been no closure. There is no closure." For over 47 long and agonizing years, Maria Lorraine Hansel's case remained open, a deep, unhealed wound for her surviving family, and a persistent, unanswered puzzle for the Colorado Springs Police Department. The passage of time is a formidable adversary in criminal investigations. It dims memories, allows potential witnesses to disappear or pass away, and offers perpetrators a lifetime to establish new identities and live seemingly unburdened lives. Yet for dedicated cold case detectives like Detective Tracy Thompson, who would later lead the renewed investigation, these files are not merely dusty folders of paper. They represent the unresolved stories of victims whose lives were unjustly taken, and the lingering, fervent hope for closure for their loved ones. The Colorado Springs Police Department, like many enlightened law enforcement agencies across the nation, understood the profound importance of revisiting such cases. They recognize that while time erodes some evidence, it also brings forth new technologies and refined investigative techniques that could potentially breathe new life into seemingly intractable mysteries. For decades, Maria's file would be periodically reviewed, ensuring that her memory and the pursuit of justice for her were never truly abandoned. This commitment provided a fragile thread of hope for Maria's family, who carried the immense burden of not knowing who had taken their loved one and why. The uncertainty of an unsolved murder often prolongs the grieving process, denying families the closure needed to truly heal. Maria's brother, David Hansel, consistently advocated for justice, calling the police every 2 weeks or month, relentlessly seeking updates and providing any information he could. A symbol of remembrance, Maria's headstone. Kathy Mobberly Taylor was no stranger to Evergreen Cemetery, having visited for decades. "I'm thinking about over 40 years. Wow," she reflected, making it a point to visit through all 4 seasons. Kathy frequently laid flowers at various loved ones' graves, but one grave held particular significance. She paid tribute to Maria by placing flowers on a tree with big thorns growing near where Maria was buried, an impromptu memorial. Maria used to have a tombstone that read, "Our Little Angel." But heartbreakingly, her family said it was removed in 1987 after her father passed away and could no longer make the payments. Precious innocent child was stabbed to death, brutally stabbed to death for no reason, and not to have a stone is just devastating, Kathy shared, adding, "And I've been too poor to put one on." Maria's nephew, Zach, who had not yet been born when his aunt was murdered, witnessed firsthand how deeply her death had affected his entire family. He took it upon himself to raise funds to provide Maria with a proper tombstone, replacing the makeshift memorial. "It would give us somewhere for the little bit of closure that we do have," Zach expressed. "I mean, we don't have closure on the case, but at least we would have some place to go and pay our dues." The community quickly rallied, generously donating funds. 45 years after her death, Maria finally received a headstone. "It brought tears to my eyes. I was so happy," Kathy exclaimed. "And I came out and I hugged each stone and had my mom take pictures, and it's just so beautiful." Maria's friends and family regarded this as a significant step towards closure, a tangible symbol of her life and their enduring love. "You will never understand why, and he could be so angry to do that," Kathy reflected on the killer. "But I have peace now, and her having a stone, something that I've really wanted for many years. So thank you." The breakthrough, where forensic science meets relentless persistence. In the mid-2010s, with advancements in DNA technology, Maria's case gained new momentum. Several items of evidence, meticulously preserved for decades, were submitted to the Colorado Bureau of Investigation for further scientific analysis. Crucially, a male DNA profile was successfully developed from a bloodstain found on Maria's blue jumpsuit. This profile was then uploaded to the Combined DNA Index System, CODIS, but no match was found, and the case once again appeared to stall. "I'm very sorry that we weren't able to solve this thing back at the time it occurred," Detective Hauer expressed. However, the true turning point in Maria Lorraine Hansel's case, like so many other high-profile cold cases in recent years, came with the revolutionary advancements in genetic genealogy. In 2019, the Colorado Springs Police Department, under Detective Tracy Thompson's leadership, enlisted the expertise of Parabon Nanolabs, a leading company in forensic genetic genealogy. The blood found on Maria's blue jumpsuit was submitted for this specialized research. Parabon utilized the genetic data profile from the unknown DNA sample to search public commercial DNA databases for potential matches. These matches were then used to meticulously build extensive family trees, tracing back to possible common ancestors. By looking through the descendants of these common ancestors, they were able to identify potential suspects. It downs to where they will naturally fall on the family tree. Detective Thompson explained. And then you see, biological parents, step-parents, children who had children, and those type of things. Through this extensive and cutting-edge research, a person of interest was finally identified. William Charles Kernan, Jr., also known as Bill Kernan. Further investigation revealed that Mr. Kernan had been a local college student and was an acquaintance of Janie Clea, the woman Maria had been babysitting for on the night of her murder. Investigators also discovered that Kernan had visited the Suncrest apartment complex on previous occasions. When the genetic genealogy results came together and Detective Thompson was able to approach Maria's brother, David Hansel, the feeling was immense. "It was an amazing feeling," she shared. "And just hearing him and his, I would say, relief or thankfulness, it's heartwarming." On the 23rd of April, 2024, the Colorado Springs Police Department made the profound and long-awaited announcement. The Maria Lorraine Hansel murder case was officially closed. Colorado Springs Police Department detectives presented Mr. Kernan's genetic genealogy results to the 4th Judicial District Attorney's Office for review. After completing the rigorous review, the District Attorney's Office concluded that William C. Kernan, Jr. was indeed responsible for Maria Hansel's murder. Police stated they do not believe Kernan knew Maria Hansel personally prior to that night. Unfortunately, full justice in a courtroom could not be dispensed. William Charles Kernan, Jr. had died on the 7th of August, 2010, at the age of 61 due to natural causes. His death and the fact that his DNA could not be directly analyzed due to cremation meant that no arrest could be made and no trial could proceed. However, the identification brought an undeniable sense of resolution and truth to the case for Maria's loved ones. In lieu of prosecution, the investigation into Maria Hansel's murder was officially closed in 2024. Numerous units and agencies, including the 4th Judicial District Attorney's Office, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, and Parabon Nanolabs, provided invaluable investigative assistance in this monumental case. The closure of Maria Lorraine Hansel's case, while coming nearly half a century after her tragic death, offers a profound measure of peace to those who loved her and those who tirelessly worked on her behalf. David Hansel's determination to never give up, matched by the relentless efforts of the police, ultimately brought this long-awaited closure. I'm happy, and I'm sad at the same time. David reflected. Because, the grief that the family feels, you can't fix that. Yet, he acknowledged the profound impact of having an answer. Kathy Mobberly Taylor, Maria's best friend, expressed immense gratitude. I've been on the phone probably once a week for the last 5 years, calling, and they've come through for us. I hope for other families they can be the same way. Maria Lorraine Hanzel's story is a deeply poignant and enduring reminder that while time may pass and the world may move on, the pursuit of justice can, and often does, endure. For her family, the answers, however agonizingly belated and without the satisfaction of a trial, finally offer a semblance of closure to a wound that had festered for far too long. Even though the specific motive behind Maria's killing remains unknown, the identification of the perpetrator offers a profound truth. Her case stands as a powerful beacon of hope for other families still awaiting answers, demonstrating unequivocally that even the coldest and most seemingly intractable of cases can eventually yield to the persistent pursuit of truth, the innovative application of science, and the unyielding commitment to giving a voice back to the silenced. As David Hanzel simply stated, with the weight of decades lifted, to Maria, sorry you can rest in peace. The echoes of the 7th of February, 1977, once deafening in their silence, now carry the quiet, profound resonance of justice finally, definitively served. Christy Wesselman was born on the 19th of April, 1970, and grew up in Glen Ellen, Illinois, a town widely regarded as one of the safest in the area. She lived with her mother, 2 older brothers, and a sister, enjoying a childhood filled with outdoor activities and neighborhood adventures. At 15 years old, Christy was a popular and active student at Glenbard South High School. She was not only involved in school life, serving as her class vice president, but also excelled in sports, playing both volleyball and softball. In the summer of 1985, Christy was taking summer classes and cherishing her free time with friends. On the fateful day of the 21st of July, 1985, Christy returned home from school around 3:30 p.m. She decided to take a quick walk to a local store, just a few minutes away, to buy a soda and a chocolate bar for herself and her mother. Her mother expected her back momentarily. However, as time ticked by, a growing unease settled in. With no cell phones in those days, Christy's mother initially thought she might have simply run into friends and lost track of time. As evening approached and Christy still hadn't appeared, her mother's worry escalated. She called Christy's friends, but none had seen her. Desperate, she drove to the store herself, scanning the streets, but found no trace of Christy. Christy's family spent several agonizing hours searching. By 1:50 a.m., with no sign of her, her mother made the difficult decision to contact the police. Officers swiftly joined the search, first by trying to retrace Christy's last known movements. They spoke with the store clerk, who knew Christy well from living nearby, and even having babysat her previously. He confirmed Christy had been there around 4 p.m., bought chocolate bars, and left, appearing happy and normal. Other witnesses also recalled seeing Christy at the store, but couldn't say where she went afterward. Investigators also spoke with all of Christy's friends, ruling out the possibility that she was simply with them. The police then focused all their resources on a thorough street search, but the darkness of the night made it incredibly challenging. There was no trace of Christy, no clues, no leads. The search continued into the early morning hours. By midday, a new team of officers took over. One detective, speculating that Christy would have taken the most direct route, suggested retracing the shortcut through a large vacant field with tall grass that lay between the residential area and the store. This path was commonly used by local kids to avoid a longer walk around the lot. As the detective followed this worn trail, something unusual caught his eye in the grass. Pushing through the overgrowth, he made a horrifying discovery. It was Christy's body. He immediately called for backup, and the scene was secured. Medical examiners determined Christy had died from 8 stab wounds, and evidence of sexual assault was found. The perpetrator's biological material was collected, but in 1985, DNA testing was still in its infancy and not a standard tool in criminal investigations. Therefore, the crucial sample was meticulously stored, awaiting future technological advancements. A puzzling detail also emerged. Christy had been wearing a pearl ring that day, but it was nowhere to be found, leading detectives to believe the killer might have taken it and to check pawn shops for leads. Despite the shocking discovery, the crime scene yielded no other physical evidence, no footprints, no personal belongings, nothing to directly explain what had happened. Investigators broadened their search, attempting to find witnesses who might have seen Christy or the killer near the field. They located several individuals who had used the path around the estimated time of the murder, but none reported anything suspicious, a perplexing detail given that Christy's body was only a few yards off the trail, albeit hidden by tall grass. Even more bizarrely, a family hosting a barbecue just a few dozen yards away from the crime scene, and a gas station employee working his entire shift nearby, reported hearing or seeing nothing out of the ordinary. Detectives theorized the attacker either followed Christy or encountered her on the path, leading her a short distance into the tall grass, and carried out the murder without a sound. The lack of screams led them to consider if Christy might have known her killer in the small town where many residents were acquainted. The police began investigating all men known to Christy, but this avenue yielded no results. They also compiled a list of men in the area with prior violent crime convictions, but none could be linked to the murder. For several months, progress stalled. They continued pursuing tips and new suspects, but every lead led to a dead end. The case dragged on for 3 years until an unexpected breakthrough in 1988. With DNA analysis becoming a more viable tool, detectives decided to collect DNA samples from all potential suspects who had been on their radar over the years. Many cooperated, and their samples didn't match. However, one man, Dana Henry, then 34, who lived near the field where Christy was found and had been an early person of interest, refused to provide a DNA sample. His refusal intensified detectives' suspicions, leading them to seek a court order to obtain his DNA. Henry appeared at the court hearing, maintaining his innocence, but was charged with contempt of court and held in a local jail cell for several days. Under immense pressure, he eventually agreed to provide his DNA. The results cleared his name. His DNA did not match the killer's own. Upon his release, Henry told reporters he had been held without clothing and forced into submission. He later revealed he spent around $50,000 on legal fees, a significant sum at the time, and had to mortgage his home, which he eventually lost. Many friends and family members turned their backs on him. A frustrated and angry Henry filed a lawsuit against the police department, though it seemed to lead nowhere. Even years later, Henry admitted that the ordeal had ruined his life, and despite never being formally charged, some people continued to believe he was guilty. He revealed to reporters that no one from the police department ever apologized for the damage caused to his life. For another year, Christy's case remained at a standstill. Then, in 1989, an unexpected twist brought it back into the spotlight. A judge issued a restraining order against a local man named Willis, who had been relentlessly bombarding Christy's family with tips about who he believed was responsible for the murder. Willis had first contacted the family in late 1985, claiming to have crucial information. He sent them various leads, but each was investigated by police and consistently found to be far-fetched or irrelevant. After almost 4 years, Christy's family, exhausted by the harassment, filed a complaint, leading to the court order barring Willis from future contact. Police subsequently investigated Willis himself, but found no evidence linking him to the crime. In 2000, the killer's DNA profile was finally uploaded to the FBI's CODIS database, but no matches were found. The case remained cold for many more years, with new teams of detectives occasionally revisiting it and following up on old tips, yet never getting closer to catching the killer. This agonizing stalemate continued for 3 entire decades. Then, in 2015, something truly unexpected happened. A notification from the FBI database flashed. The DNA sample from Christy's killer perfectly matched a recently uploaded profile. The DNA belonged to Michael Jones, a 62-year-old man living in Champaign, about 150 miles from Christy's home. Jones's DNA had been added to the database after he was arrested for domestic violence, following a report from his wife. This was made possible by an Illinois law passed in 2002, which mandated that anyone suspected of a crime provide a DNA sample. Ironically, the main advocate for this very law, was the state's attorney from the same county where Christy's murder occurred, and this particular unsolved case had been a major driving force behind his push for the legislation. As soon as the DNA match came through, investigators sprang into action, delving into Michael Jones's background. The most striking discovery was that his name had never once appeared in the entire history of Christy's case. He was never a suspect, a witness, or even remotely connected. The detectives simply hadn't known he existed. Michael Jones, however, in 1983, had significant criminal history. His first brush with the law was in the mid-1970s for assaulting a woman, though he reportedly avoided severe consequences. Just a year later, in 1977, he attacked a 27-year-old woman, assaulted her, and left her at a hospital parking lot. When a warrant was issued, Michael turned himself in, expressing regret and claiming deep respect for the law, attributing his actions to serious mental health issues. An independent psychiatrist, however, determined he was fully aware of his actions. As a result, Jones was sentenced to 10 to 20 years in prison. Crucially, Michael was released early for good behavior, serving only 6 years of his sentence and returning to the streets by 1983, just 2 years before Christy's murder. His victim was not even informed of his early release. She later stated that had she known, she would have done everything to challenge the decision. A year after his release, Michael married, but in 1994, his first wife divorced him and secured a restraining order due to his unhealthy interest in one of her young relatives. Despite this alarming behavior, no formal charges were filed. In 1999, Michael was arrested again for assaulting a family member of his new girlfriend. Detectives also learned that Michael frequently took long solo motorcycle trips and often visited relatives in Chicago. Given that Christy's town was on the outskirts of his route, it's highly plausible he simply passed through the area while traveling, explaining why he was never on the detectives' radar. If he was merely passing through for a few hours, tracking his presence would have been nearly impossible. Christy's mother initially didn't think much of the police's inquiry about Michael Jones, as she had been contacted countless times over the past 3 decades. But everything changed when investigators obtained a fresh DNA sample from Michael while he was in prison, definitively confirming he was the killer. They personally delivered the news to Christy's mother. After all these years, the man responsible for her daughter's murder had finally been caught. Before formally charging Michael, detectives spoke with his ex-girlfriend, who described him as volatile, prone to sudden rages, and eerily obsessed with detective books and true crime shows. This information led investigators to suspect he might be responsible for other unsolved crimes, given his solo trips, criminal tendencies, and fascination with covering tracks. After meticulously building their case, police officially charged Michael Jones on the 18th of September, 2015. He initially denied any involvement, and the legal process dragged on for 3 years, with the trial finally commencing in 2018. Prosecutors sought a life sentence, but Michael ultimately chose to plead guilty in exchange for a lighter sentence. As part of the plea deal, he was not required to reveal any details about the crime, but the overwhelming DNA evidence left no doubt about his guilt. As a result, the judge sentenced him to 80 years in prison, with the possibility of parole no earlier than 2095, effectively ensuring he will never walk free again. Christy's family expressed profound gratitude to the investigators for finally bringing the case to a close. Christy's mother also voiced her deep frustration over Michael's early release in 1983, stating unequivocally that had he served his full 10-year sentence, he would not have had the opportunity to attack her daughter, and Christy would still be alive today. Dana Henry, the man unjustly suspected for years, also attended the trial. In a later interview, he shared that the false accusations had ruined his life, and even decades later, he hadn't fully recovered. He had hoped seeing justice served would bring him healing, but it didn't. Henry also revealed that despite the immense personal cost, no one from the police department ever apologized to him or faced consequences for the damage they had caused.